Okay, let us start. Okay, so managing the process groups. So basically, it's managing your team. So contents, so project integration management. So these are the steps. Okay, so integration management, executing processes. So basically, we are going to discuss on how to direct and manage the project work. Next is the monitoring or integration management, monitoring and controlling processes. So under this uh, process, so we have the monitor and control project work, perform integrated change control. And then lastly, you have integration management closing processes. Okay. So closing the project or the phase. So so giving you the overview of what to do in the integration management process. So the first thing nga imong buhaton is to develop the project charter. Okay. So project charter, so it will include all the kuan. So all the management, so how to communicate, how to manage the risk, manage quality, time, and so on. Okay, so nakabutang na siya sa project charter. So after the project charter, so you have developed the project management plan. So how are you going to execute the project charter? Okay. So kumbaga kani siya is more specific. Okay. What are your specific action plans to uh, execute the project? Then after the plan, so you have the execution. So you are now going to direct and manage the project work. And then aside from after the execution, so you have to monitor and control the project work. So diri nimo tan-awon tong imong risk register, imong stakeholder register, okay? Your quality management, your quality plan, your time plan. Okay, so di ba natay gihimo nga sa time we have the um katong gihimo nato katong critical path method. Okay? So diri na siya buhaton. So you constantly monitor if everything is working according to your plan, and if wala, then you have to take note. So nganong wala siya natuman, okay? So what are the information nga wala siya? Probably wala na na consider or wala na appeal sa plano. And then lastly is the closing the project or the phase. So making decisions. So project integration involves making decisions and trade-offs. Okay. So because we are doing the project with, of course, with the limited resources. So not only talking about the money, but also time, the quality, the people that you have, okay, and mga policy, government regulations, and so on. Okay, so that is why there are possible trade-offs. Okay, so and you need to be aware of those. Okay, so you need to be aware of what is more important. So resource allocation and where to concentrate resources during any given work effort on the project. Okay, so asa man ang dapat i-prioritize. Okay? Competing objectives and alternatives. So how are you going to handle the different alternatives? Or how are you going to evaluate, okay, which objectives must be are more important? Okay? And how are you going to evaluate which alternatives ang dapat nimo buhaton? So you can use your quantitative and qualitative nga mga factors. Interdependencies among the project management knowledge areas. Okay. So take note that there are, although we are discussing this, we're discussing them separately, but actually, in practice, they are integrated. Okay. They're well integrated. So you cannot discuss project risk management without discussing the time, the quality, okay, the initiation. So their projects are the different knowledge areas are interdependent. Okay. So affordability and amount of project management activities to provide for the planning, the risk management, performance reporting, stakeholder communication, etc. Okay. So although we know what are the ideal way on how to manage those areas. However, we have to take into consideration also the affordability and the resources nga naa sa atoa. Okay? And then successfully meeting the customer and other stakeholder expectation. So of course, the most important is to meet the customers and other stakeholders' expectations. So that's the whole point of doing the project management. So ongoing activities. So part of the integration activities are the following. Okay, so participate in or oversee authorization and performance of activities to produce the project deliverables. So, okay, so you need also to supervise the project, okay? Although not from time to time, but at least you know the status of every project deliverable. Okay? Second is measure and monitor the project's progress and appropriate actions to meet the project objectives. So dapat you have to encourage your members or those who are executing the project. Okay? So ma-encourage nimo sila nga if there are problems. So dapat din sila mahadlok nga musulti sa imo so that mapangitaan dayon siya og paagi. Okay? Kaysa sa last na siya mahibaw-an. Okay? And third, have a good change control processes. So change control processes. So di ba dili basta-basta mo undergo og change. Dapat na ana siya authorization or at least man lang na ay document that will really give you an evidence or give proof of evidence nga the change is being requested from one of your customers or from your clients. So project tracking. So what are the tools that you can use to track the project? So first you have to utilize the measurable objectives. So the quality criteria kung ipasarba, the standards, metrics and targets to determine if you are on target to meet the objectives you define. Okay. So you also address the scope, the schedule, the cost, the technical and the quality parameters. So these are found in your scope management, time management, cost management, and quality management. Performance measurement baseline is an approved integrated scope. Okay. So schedule cost plan from the work against which the project execution is compared to measure and manage performance. So that is why it's very important to have a plan, okay? Because your plan can be used as your control, okay? Or to track your project if hapit na ba mahuman or na-meet ba nato ang because your plan will uh, is the minimum nga kuan nga dapat ma-achieve to siya so that we can deliver the project. So if what is happening is not according to your plan, then something must be wrong. Okay. So that is why as a project manager, so we spend more our time on the plan, okay, making the plan before we execute. So types of tracking tools for project performance. So we have already done the following outputs. So the earned value management, the forecast, the quality criteria and metrics for acceptance of work packages and deliverables. We have the checklist, we have the risk register, issue logs, and the change control approval log. So best practices for the integration planning. So number one, so in the planning phase, so these are the best practices. So you have develop an actionable, okay, actionable project plan that is comprehensive and concise. So your plan must be very concise, okay? So dili siya kanang vague nga maglisod ka og unsaon nimo na siya pag-implement, okay? It should be more specific, it should be comprehensive, and the plan is very implementable. Second is ensure the customer is in agreement with the project plan. So before you start the project, so make sure that the customer understood your plan and dapat there is already an agreement. Okay? So pwede nimo siya pa-sign on sa whatever, sa project charter ba karon, okay? So and making sure that the customer understood what's the content. Develop the scope requirements that are measurable and testable. So scope requirements, it should be measurable and testable. So meaning sa pagkama pa lang nimo og objectives, dapat na kay idea on how to measure that, uh, how to measure the attainment of that objective. Okay, so seek consensus of the team that the activities can be achieved with allotted resources in the time provided. So you have to seek the consensus of the team. So with the resources that you have and the time you provided, um, you have to ask them if this is really feasible or can we really do it this at this period. Okay, so if we are only given 6 months mo ni ang project, you ask the team kung kaya ba nila or kaya ba sa team to finish that the project in that period. As to organizing, so creating the work breakdown structure, so following what's the ideal way of um, chopping the activities. So from the project management, so to project deliverables and then to activities. So and then the project needs drive the organizational structure. Okay. So balance the span of control and delegation. So so you need to know what to delegate, which activities needs to be delegated and which activities na kailangan i-retain sa project manager. Staffing, so seek the experience available, interested and committed people. So these are the qualities that you need for a uh, project team members. Okay, obtain the sufficient personnel and collocate. So when you collocate, bring these people together in one place. Okay, so if that is possible, and if not, so develop the strong communications and team building tools so that your virtual team really bonds with one another and with the project. So that's the reason why we need to have a team building so that we understand um, each other more. Okay. So in the case of a project team, so they also need to have a bond so that they can really work together as one. Okay. So execution part, so direct and manage project work. So it is the process of performing the work defined in the project management plan to achieve the project's objectives. So implementation is just as important as doing the project management plan. So we can have a very comprehensive and a good project management plan, but if the execution is not that good, so sayang lagi hapon. Okay? So the implementation must also be supervised. Okay? So so execute the project. So perform activities to meet the project requirements. So create the project deliverables. So you can also staff, train, and manage the team members. Obtain, manage, and utilize resources, including the materials, tools, equipment, and facilities. Establish and manage project communication channels. Generate project data and work performance information. Manage the change requests and approvals. Manage the risk and implement the risk response activities. Manage sellers and suppliers. And collect and document lessons learned. So, every now and then, so dapat naka-document ang or naka-written ang inyong mga activities so that this can be part of your kanang lessons learned nga register or kanang document, okay? So that you will replicate what are the good things that you have done while executing the project and what are the wrong decisions, okay? So that the next time makorek na siya and implement approved process improvement activities. So what are the things that can be improved, okay? And what are we doing good so far? So best practices for the execution. So one is direct and manage. So you keep the project visible through the use of war rooms. So kato again, ang war rooms is a conference room where the team can do their job. Okay? So most of the time they do their work in a war room or some other dedicated project space. Continuously update the project status. So manage by walking around. So you need to walk around as a project manager. Get out and see what is really happening. So develop the confidence and insight by meeting one-on-one with the team members. So give them your time and attention. And if they work hard, so let them know that you appreciate them. So even though some employees are not well compensated, basta lang, but if they see that the managers are appreciating them, so oh, that's enough reason for them to stay in the team. Set up a system that allows the ability to drill down to details when needed, including the vendor performance. So report. So provide access to project information so that all stakeholders know what they need to know and when they need to know it. So it is never a good idea to make people guess about the project status. So you also need to report to your team what is also the status of the project. Okay. So what they need to know about the project, okay? And it should be accessible to them. So report bad news as well as good news, timely and in context. Okay? So dili siya dapat ikuan, uh, It's not always the good news ang dapat i-report, but as well as the bad news. So deliver solutions and suggestions when reporting problems. So be a proactive problem solver. Okay. So if there are problems, so much better if you as a member, a team member, dapat na po kay ika-suggest niya solution. So be direct and consistent with the executive management. Show them that you can be counted on. So show them that you are on top of the situation. Okay. So in the monitor and control project work, so it is the process of the tracking, reviewing, regulating the progress to meet the performance objectives defined in the project management plan. So perform integrated change. So it is the process of reviewing all the changes, managing changes to deliverables, organizational process assets, project documents, and project management plan. So we all have already encountered this term. So scope creep. So these are changes that are made without the proper process authority. So it can happen. The scope creep also happens when the project objectives and requirements are kept changing. Okay? Sige, otro-otro and the results to inaccurate schedule or budget. So the cause of the scope creep. So first, poorly defined objectives. So again, the objectives must be smart, di ba? Should be specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bounded. So second is the lack of defined change control process. So every changes must undergo a formal process. Okay. So not to discourage changes, but at least it is well documented. Okay. So it can also serve as your evidence. Okay. Or pwede na nimo gamiton kuan to prevent to sa tawag ani para dili ka mabali sa kliyente that you're not doing what they are uh, what they are expecting. So changing stakeholder perspectives. So it could be one kana mag-utro-utro og mga kuan hunahuna sa mga stakeholders. Okay? Pinakadelikado ana if ang mag-utro gunahon na ang sponsor or ang mag-provide sa budget. So this can be minimized if they have a document that are nga pwede nila signan. Okay? Increase understanding of what it takes to get it done and inability to say no. Okay? So so the power of saying no, di ba? So most of the time we are afraid to say no. Okay? But there are cases that, especially in the project, so you really need to know the limits of your team. Okay? And you have that courage to say no. Okay? It's not easy, but it's part of the job of the project manager. Scope creep results in the completion delays, escalation of costs, and increases in the project complexity. So that's the consequence of having a scope creep. So a good change control process is the defense against scope creep. Okay? So it includes mga written and documented change requests. So if there is a change, so it should be documented. Coordinating a complete change review, including analysis of scope, schedule, and cost and schedule. So analyzing the change, unsay iyang impact, unsay consequence niya sa scope, sa cost and schedule, and most importantly is to communicate these changes to the stakeholder that made the request. Okay, changes in the scope, schedule, cost, the quality, the risk, and resource impacts. So there's also a prioritization of changes of approval. So not all changes must be approved. Okay. So diba, part of the part of the work of the project manager is to approve and disapprove. Okay. So if you think there are changes that cannot be implemented, okay, so without changing some of the important yung mga aspects, okay. So for example, gusto sila mag-change pero ang budget maura gyapon dili nila i-increase. So might as well disapprove the change. So defined levels of approval. So the project manager, the change control board. So who among your stakeholders are part of the change control board? Okay. And the executive management and of course the customer. So what are the best practices for monitoring and controlling? So these are the tips. So be selective in choosing the key indicators that provide appropriate feedback to the control system. Okay. So choosing the indicators that will help you determine if um, okay ba or we are doing according to plan or there are problems nga we need to address now so that dili na siya mo escalate. Use appropriate control tools to monitor these indicators. Okay, so you have the risk register, so you have the stakeholder register. Okay, so quality plan, the time plan. Okay, so this can be used as your control tools. Conduct performance reviews frequently. Design a change control process appropriate for the project and organization. So, so dapat, of course, the change control process must also follow the policies in the organization. Establish a change control board. So there should be a change control board. So not necessarily nga ang project manager is pilaan eh. Okay? So don't be afraid to escalate to senior management when appropriate. Okay? So if there are problems, so ayaw pag hiro-hiro na kaya nimo, so you need to talk to the senior management so that you can be given assistance. Okay? Because na magina cases even though 'di ba usahay dili na to may bawaan nga dili na day nato kaya, okay? And then tungod kay naanad ka nga independent ka, okay? So you don't want the help of others. You want it to solve it by yourself, okay? So that could be your weakness, okay? So especially if you are managing a team, so you should not be afraid, okay? So you need to utilize the the skills and talents of your team members as well as the influence of your senior management. And then lastly, you have the close the project or phase. So it is the process of finalizing all activities, okay, across all of the project management process to formally complete the project or phase. So finalizing all the activities. So what needs to be addressed during the closing? So a formal closing process is desirable to complete the administrative close out of the project or phase. Okay. So first, if you think you are done, so you need to review. So you need to define actions and activities needed to satisfy completion or exit criteria. Okay. What are the closing activities that need to be done? Okay. Transference of the products, services, or results to the next phase, production or operations, or to the customer. So if you are developing a product, so how are you going to transfer that to your customer? Okay. collection of the project or phase records, acceptance and audit results, and procurement and contract closeouts. So all documents nga kailangan i-keep, okay? So dili kay paguman sa project ilabay na dayon tanan documents, okay? So these documents nagyapon na siya uh, nagyapon na siya use, okay? And of course documentations of the lessons learned that have been recorded throughout the project executions. So before your team members uh, mag-separate, okay? So dapat you should have a meeting first. So mainly discussing what they have learned during the entire project. Okay. So and this must be documented. Okay. So dili kay paguman sa project wala na dayon. Okay. So it's necessary that before you separate ways, so you should conduct a meeting solely for that purpose. Okay. The lessons learned throughout the project. So learning from experience. So this is the purpose of the lessons learned. So identify and document project successes and project failures, okay? So that you can experience the success again and you can avoid the reasons why you failed, okay? So second is to make recommendations to improve future projects performance. So you can write in the lessons learned the recommendations on what to improve the next time nga mag-conduct mo og project or especially with a similar project. So the people responsible for documenting the lessons learned are project manager, the project team, and some stakeholders or key stakeholders. The lessons learned process should be conducted throughout the project life cycle. So although we can have a final meeting for the lessons learned, but during the entire phase, so dapat nakadocument yapon na siya. Okay? So every now and then, dapat na i-journal. Okay? So nai-written niya buhaton documenting the lessons learned. So these are then compiled, formalized, stored, and made easily accessible. Okay. So this should be it should be accessible to the not only for your team but perhaps to the next nga mga project team members. Okay. So katong mga magsunod kay balo na sila unsay buhaton. So the following should be documented. So technical and product development processes, managerial processes, aiding and hindering factors encountered, and team building aspects. So to truly be lessons learned, the following should be some of the outcomes. Okay. So the knowledge base update, corporate policies, procedures, and process update, improved business skills. So these are the outcomes if you are, kumbaga, imo na siyang na habit. Every time you do the project, you are documenting the lessons learned. So these are the outcomes. So your knowledge will be updated. Your corporate policies, procedures, and processes can also be updated. Improve the business skills, overall product service improvements, and risk management plan updates. So best practices for closing. So when it comes to closing the project, here are some best practices to keep in mind. Okay. So recognize and when possible reward the team. So dapat nagyapon recognition. So kung wala kay ika-reward, so much better you naamoy, kumbaga naamoy activity specifically for recognizing the efforts of your team. So insist on collecting and reviewing lessons learned. So each team member must be asked. Okay. So kung maulaw sila, you can uh, pwede nimo sila pahimuon og sulat. Okay. Especially nga if maulaw sila during the meeting. So you need to collect and review all the lessons learned. Assist team members in transitioning off the project. So it's part of the job to transition from the project to their next project, or perhaps going back to their jobs. So communicate the project performance to management and seek their feedback. So you also need to communicate to your management, to senior management, about the performance of your project, and then seek their feedback. Ensure handoffs are successfully completed. Okay? So unsa ni mga handoffs mo ni mga deliverables. Okay? Okay, so we're done with the project management. So as for your presentation, so the project charter, so you can do any project, okay, as long as it fits the definition of a project. So it could be a personal, okay? So pwede ka ng personal nga kuan, personal project, or a project that you want, okay? So especially katong mga project that will help the community or society. So for example karon so naatay mga crisis, 'di ba? Naatay mga calamities, okay? So what can you do to help them, okay? So so this is the kuan. So I would appreciate projects that would not kuan lang application of the knowledge, but it could really be of help to the society, okay? But it's not mandatory, ha? So it's just a suggestion, okay? So for example, muni akong gi-submit sa when I have my Coursera, so kani dinalian ra pod ni siya. Okay, so my project, so setting up an accounting system for G-Core Pharmacy. So I have a deployment date, the project purpose, justification. Okay, so then I have the measurable objectives and the related success criteria. So what are my evidence that I have successfully completed the objective? So high level requirements. So when you say high level, so this refers to mga intangible nga mga needs. So for example, support from the management and employees. The project is cost effective, so it should outweigh the benefits than the cost. So the bookkeeper is highly trained and competent for his or her job. So I have the assumptions and constraints. Okay. So limitations. So the accounting system must be ready by September 1. So one bookkeeper can be hired, 15,000 monthly. So financial statements must be produced from September 1 and succeeding months. And then the team must have a good background in accounting. So of course, we are doing the setting up the accounting system. So dapat lang some of my team or most of my team have a good background in accounting. High level risk. So many mga risks. Some employees might not support. The employment of the bookkeeper might cause a delay. The bookkeeper is not updated, and for unforeseeable events and circumstances, the project might not be deployed based on schedule. So milestones, so dapat na apoy date, okay? Summary of milestone schedule. So and then the schedule, okay? Target schedule kano sa dapat na siya mahitabo. So understood the nature, financial data, okay, so on. Then my last milestone is to produce financial statements for September 2020. Okay, summary budget. So what are the resources that you need? So materials, labor, equipments, And I also have actually di dapat ni siya, dili ni siya contingency reserve, but entire project man gud ni siya, so it should be management reserve. Sa entire project gani imong hatagan og reserve or uh, kuan, management reserve. But for each deliverable, you can have a contingency reserve. You have the work breakdown structure. So the deliverables, so accounting systems flowchart. So what are the specific activities to come up with the accounting flowchart? Trial balance. So in preparing the financial statements, what are the specific activities? So I now have kani before ko ni arrive ani, so dapat um kani, so 'di ba you use this in preparing the the PERT or the project evaluation review technique. So although sa ako ang project charter wala ko nakahimo og katong PERT, mas maayo ko makahimo mo og katong PERT, okay? PERT CPM. But I think I gave you this as an assignment. So that you can come up with a project schedule. Okay? The budget. Okay? This is management reserve. A contingency reserve, ganito lang ang term if per deliverable. But if you're talking about the entire project, so use the term management reserve. I have the responsibility assignment matrix. Okay, katong RASI. The RASI chart. Responsible, accountable, consult, and inform. We have the project risk management. So I first conducted a SWOT analysis. And then I have the risk matrix. Then the risk register. Okay. I think that's the last output for the project charter. Okay. Anyway, so everything is written in your syllabus. So the guidelines on how are you going to do all of this. So naa siya dito and what is also the criteria. Okay. And what points are you, unsa nga points ang ihatag sa inyo. So naa dito tanan. Okay, so questions? Any questions before we end? Or any clarifications? Okay, so none. Yes, any kind of project. So wala na muna ako gilimit to any management, accounting, or financial management yung mga topics. So you can do any project. Okay. So especially if you are, for example, if you are part of an organization, so and then you have an activity, so you can already use what you have learned in the project management. Okay, and you can use that as your uh pwede ninyo ikuan as your project mo subject sa inyong project charter. Okay. Yes, mo na ni ang last topic for semifinals. Okay, so again, next, I will give you 2 weeks. Okay, so the next week would be for your finishing all your semifinals and assessments, and another week for the preparation of your final activity. Okay, so your project charter presentation would be your final exam. Okay, and then schedule lang. So I prefer schedules. Pwede man weekdays, pero the kuan magud na namoy mag-present mo sa panel, okay? So may two panelists nga akong gi-invite are available on 6 p.m. siguro. So we can have, if you want to present during the weekdays, so we can have evenings for the your project charter presentation, and you can have the weekends, okay? So preferably kanang beyond 4:30, okay? Kaya I have also a class on Saturday. Okay. So, ang mag-present per group na dili na necessary nga tanan the whole class will be there para mag-present mo. So you just schedule an akuan. Kamo na mo schedule sa ako kung kada saan ninyo gusto mag-present. Basta kay dili mo maabtan sa hopefully the earlier the better. So ayun napaabta pod og December 24. Okay? Kung December 1 ready na mo, then mas maayo so that you are already done with this subject. Okay? So after the presentation, after the project charter presentation, the next step would be revising your project charter and then submitting to me your project charter. So na naman dito, so use the Dropbox to submit the revised project charter. So if you're done with the assessments, you're done with the exams, and you're done with the project charter, so what na mo'y kuan. So you can already focus on other subjects. And then sa project charter presentation, so formal ta dapat mag-formal ta. Okay? Because it's a practice in the kuan. Okay? So balag ka na ang adlaw mag-formal attire ta. Okay? Because maulaw po ta sa atong guest. Okay? So our guests are the developers of I don't know if you're familiar with the Transic app, and then one of the guests is also the one who made the Agus. Okay. All right. So no more questions, clarifications. Okay. So I think there is none. So I just remind you. So please, hinahinay na og katong settle sa inyong mga payments, so your obligations sa school, so that uh, kuan man gud. So para di pud masayang inyong gihaguan. Okay. Because I cannot post your grades if you're not fully paid. Okay. So please, hinahinayon na natong settle atong payment obligations. All right. So thank you for your participation. Thank you for listening. So 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 throughout all the our synchronous class. So thank you for attending. So good luck in your presentation. Okay. So the guide is all written there in the syllabus. Okay. Okay. So thank you. See you on your project charter presentation.